The black leaders and intellectuals whose speeches and quotes fly across social media, from the OGs like Martin and Malcolm, modern influencers fashioning themselves as leaders, the womanizers running podcasts, they all have misogyny in common. Any devout member of the NOI, just as an example, and by extension, any other Abrahamic religion or offshoot of those religions, is a perpetrator and or victim of misogyny. The hundreds of sects of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, doesn't matter. I know a lot of y'all are already leaving comments and protests, but pump the brakes and hear me out. Criticizing one aspect of the broad array of personality traits, perspectives, knowledge, and skills possessed by our cultural heroes doesn't invalidate everything they've ever done. We can and will learn things from them. It's just worth taking a look at, though. I'm still on my journey out of misogyny as we speak, so we're learning together. For anybody who's tempted to dismiss this as the rant of a male feminist, you're right. You know what's on my side, though? The facts. I hope I don't have to spell this out, but breaking down the concepts of misogyny and patriarchy needs to happen before I can move into any political discussions. Both concepts form the foundation of America's social hierarchy, which in turn built our government. Patriarchy gets thrown around a lot in internet discourse, so I'll probably need to give it a definition before we dive deeper. It's defined as, quote, a social, legal, and political system where men hold primary power, dominating roles in political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property. It structures society to prioritize male perspectives, resulting in the oppression or systemic inequality of women. Misogyny is a byproduct and necessary component of patriarchy. I'll be defining that later. Let me prove the point I made in the intro about America's dominant religion. Honestly, if I need to prove it, you haven't been paying attention for the last few centuries or so. If you're really religious, you need to watch this. If you don't need to be convinced that religions are misogynistic and don't want to hear it, that's what the chapters are here for. Feel free to skip ahead. The supreme being in the universe of every Abrahamic religion is gendered as a man in their official holy books. The Bible, Quran, Torah all do it very often. The first obvious argument from Christians is God refers to himself that way in the books. God as in the Father, not the triple-decker entity y'all call the Trinity. I can't really say you're wrong, but it does make it evident that there's some influence from the authors who wrote these scriptures going on. By definition, God is outside of creation, so why would they use a pronoun at all? Many Christians, Jews, and Muslims would counter by saying it was just a sign of the times, which makes my point for me. Others might say, look, Semitic languages kind of default to a male pronoun, and that even though it's in the books, it's just a grammatical convenience. Again, do you hear what you're saying? I understand that it wouldn't be as easy to convert new believers if you referred to God as an it, but all religious experts agree. God has no gender. On top of the gendered language, all three religious texts have extremely regressive laws and make clearly misogynistic statements regarding heterosexual relationship dynamics too. I'm going to pick on Christianity because that was the bane of my childhood, but feel free to drop examples from your own religion in the comments. In the Christian Bible, wives are listed alongside a man's property, servants, and livestock as things that shouldn't be coveted in the Ten Commandments. Most importantly, don't covet that ass. The 22nd chapter of Deuteronomy is a gold mine, though. By the way, I'm not reading the King James texts on screen, but I'll put them here so y'all can't say I'm misinterpreting them. Ironically, I have to give a trigger warning for abuse and assault before discussing the Bible. Skip here if you don't want to take that in right now. Good? Alright. If a man rapes a woman who is not engaged, he must pay her father 50 shekels of silver and marry her for life, with no right to divorce. If a woman intervenes in a fight between her husband and another man by grabbing the assailant's genitals, you shall cut off her hand, show her no pity. Bro, taketh him by the secrets is the most hilarious way to say grab his balls. The Bible got jokes. If a husband accuses his new wife of not being a virgin, her parents must produce evidence, aka the marriage bedsheet. If not, she is to be stoned to death at her father's door. Hey, Cam, that's just the Old Testament. It got better later. First off, if your God has no beginning or end, They don't get to improve over time. Only humans get to be imperfect and learn life lessons. Y'all's words, not mine. Also, it absolutely didn't get better. I'm going to read this one in Old English so you can really feel the gravity of it. Moses was leading the children of Israel against the Midianites, right? Here's what he told them after they won. I'm skipping verse 17 because it's unrelated, but I'll put it on screen so you can see I'm not changing the context of it. And Moses said unto them, have ye saved all the women alive? Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him. So, women who've had sex. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Women children. This book is evil. The New Testament doesn't really improve that much. This one's from your boy Timothy. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet.
Shut up, bitch!
This would be a good place for the fictional story about Eve dooming mankind forever. It always has to be a woman's fault. I'm going to wrap this section up with an example from White Jesus. Yes, he was very progressive for the time and did street magic, among other things. But again, he was the son of perfection and was supposed to be the example of perfection, right? If perfection can be crucified, the rest of y'all are forgiven as long as you accept him, etc. He stated that a man who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and marrying a divorced woman is also adultery. So the burden of being unmarried and getting into the wrong kind of relationship falls on the woman. Say it with me. White Jesus is a misogynist, exactly. The breakdown I just did for Christianity applies to most versions of religion in the West, because the West is misogynistic, and these religions give them a foolproof playbook to reinforce that misogyny generation after generation. America is built on Christianity, originally Protestantism, but that's obviously expanded since then. It's built into our government to the point where a Bible is used to swear in every government official, more important than the manager of your local post office. It's the reason over 9 states banned abortion with 0 exceptions, including if you've been sexually assaulted. That shit is evil, and so is the Bible. The current president virulently and famously hates women. He was found liable for, as I've mentioned before. He insults them on international broadcasts casually, and it's something his supporters like by every indication. This is low-hanging fruit, though. Everybody knows Trump is a sociopath. Let's pivot to my misogyny. From this point forward, it's much more anecdotal. I've been challenging myself on this for over a decade now, from my music to the inadvertent ways I show up in relationships. I've always thought that because I actively advocate for women and femme-presenting people in general, haven't called them offensive terms in my music, and strive to see them as equals in my everyday life, that it doesn't make me sexist or a misogynist. And it's just not true. Misogyny is the dislike of, contempt for, or ingrained prejudice against women. I'm pretty confident that I've conquered the first two. But there's a lot of ingrained prejudice that men like me carry around with us every day. We don't think it's there, but women have told me that it is. In my case, I can point to how irritated I got when some of my exes would challenge me on things that I didn't think they had the right to call me out on. Things like contradictions between what I claim publicly and what I do in private, even when it doesn't affect our relationship. I complained about the questions they'd ask me because I don't want that kind of criticism at home. If it affects you, sure, call me out, but I don't want to hear it when it doesn't hurt you. That's misogyny, because not only am I overlooking the ways it impacts her half the time, but if the roles were reversed, I'd absolutely point it out to her. If it was a friend of mine pointed it out to me, I probably wouldn't react the same way. That misogyny is rooted in the desire to date someone who doesn't push me like that. A woman who's my peace. The whole concept of us wanting women to be our peace is rooted in us expecting them to shut up about their problems, listen to ours, take care of us, etc. And it took me a long time to realize I was doing this because I actively seek out ambitious women with a smart mouth like mine. I enjoy women being witty and at my level of intellect. What I didn't enjoy was an actual equal, someone who can call me out on my shortcomings and isn't afraid to. This is a clear flaw in my psyche that I'm actively working through. And that's just my misogyny. To the hetero men who identify with your birth gender, the ones who look up to me or admire my work, as many of you have reached out to me and said, yours likely looks completely different from mine, but they have some similar DNA. It's a wide spectrum, but no matter where you are on it, the collective effect of all that internalized hate and prejudice harms women in our society. The expectation for them to do all the labor at home while also having jobs that they aren't adequately compensated for. Our government stripping their reproductive rights in an effort to force them into reproducing. Calling gender roles traditional when you really mean abusive and antiquated. Fathers being disappointed at gender reveals when it's a girl. Supporting musicians and athletes who beat on or verbally abuse women. There's so many ways it can manifest in real life. Let go of Chris Brown. Stop idolizing Future and caping for Tory. Stop watching the NFL. Stop bothering women who don't want you. It'll never happen, but I gotta throw those out there. And of course, some of this applies to women too. They've internalized all of the patriarchy we've thrown at them to the point where they participate and reinforce it. I'll close this out by addressing the male red pillars. You don't deserve a woman. I don't deserve anybody. The resentment that a lot of red pill adherents feel stems from the feeling that something's being done to them. Like there's this injustice that isn't being addressed properly. The injustice is that we, as men, were given this toxic, false idea of what masculinity is from the people and system that raised us. Not even saying they intended to do so all the time, or that our parents are bad. The myth that men don't have masculinity and femininity inside them, the myth that expressing nurturing behaviors as a man isn't acceptable, and the myth that toughness or bluntness are the most admirable qualities of a man are tearing us apart, and we gotta start being man enough to express the other aspects of our humanity in public with pride. I don't know about y'all, but I like to cuddle a lot. It's like my favorite thing. I like holding hands. I need more friends, and I'm actively working on it. And I'm gonna start telling my close male friends I love them more often. Cause I do. At least a couple of y'all. Restless, angry, isolated men are the reason we got Trump twice. I'm attempting to use the truth to deprogram even one person that's watching this. I'm not the behavior police, just pointing out some things we gotta root out if we ever wanna move forward together. That's what progressivism is supposed to be at the end of the day. My upbringing and parenting made me a tough person. And there's benefits to being a tough person, right? But like, why do I have to be tough? Why does a man have to be tough? What war am I fighting? And yeah, being a black man in America requires a certain amount of toughness too, but toughness looks like a lot of things. I would argue that women are tougher than us in a lot of ways, especially physically. If you're new here, this is my series Facts. This is the first like official episode after the kickoff. And I figured we needed to start strong with something that men don't talk about enough and really start to root out these problems, at least within our small community. And as it gets bigger, hopefully more people find it and find some value in this message. Power to the people.